from Brixie's Brewers?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, Jason.
All
Brixie's
right.
Brewers Homebrew Club.
All right. Welcome.
Yes.
Well, before we get into our discussion, I'll give a proper introduction. Today is Thursday, March 20th. We do the webcast here on the Facebook and the YouTube channel every Thursday at 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We do a podcast under the same name. A Nice Place to Brew is available on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and all the places you get your podcast from. Our website is www.aniceplacetobrew.com, and our social media links are A Nice Place to Brew and Nice Place to Brew. Welcome, everybody. Hope everybody's having a good week. Dave, here's our first question with each podcast. What are you drinking tonight?
This evening, I'm drinking a Munich Helles, which I just bottled out of the keg this afternoon.
All right.
Nice.
Good deal.
Nice.
Yes.
Almost, we're getting into October. I know Helles is not Oktoberfest, but right when you said Helles, my brain went right to Oktoberfest, and we're not so far away.
No, not at all. Not at all.
What about you?
They're out right now already.
What about you, Polly?
I'm drinking Mosaic Promise, and I got a couple of bottles here that Uncle Rick got from a friend from the East Coast, a Flying Dog, and can't remember the name of the other one, but regardless. That's what I'm drinking on tonight. What are you drinking on there, Jason?
So I'm drinking a beer from a brewery called Real A Brewing out of Frisco, Texas. And this is a beer that's called Fresh Kicks Hazy IPA. And let me just hold this up right here, and you can judge for yourself.
Looks kind of clear.
Does that look like a hazy to you?
Nope.
Compared to most hazies, that looks pretty clear, Jason.
It sure does. Yes.
I mean, some hazies look like they look like orange juice. Some of them.
You know what? And I
right.
do want to talk about that as we get on with the webcast. But before that, tasting this beer, this is a good beer, but this to me tastes like a brute. I'm seriously, I wouldn't normally joke about this, but I'm wondering if this beer was mislabeled.
Okay.
So it's coming across very dry to you, Jason.
Yeah. There's definitely a dryness.
Okay. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I brewed today. Oh, lost Dave.
I
brewed today. So
what did you brew today?
It was fun. Mosaic Promise, another one. You know, trying to hone in the one for Uncle Rick that he loves. So
okay, all right.
This is our favorite time of year because, like, for $15, 15-pack Mosaic Promise, I can drink this all the time. Buck a beer.
Yeah.
And you're good. And I just think it's kind of funny because there was one time I brewed this on a whim, and like a week, about 3 or 4 days later, after I was done brewing, I look and Founders had the Mosaic Promise out, and it made me giggle because actually that beer we brewed it to bring it up to Madison for Great Taste Ticket Weekend. We borrowed the JBG kegerator or the trasherator, and we brought 2 beers up there. The Mosaic Promise and what was the other one? It was the very first time we were doing that 1050 clone that me and Sean have been working on for years.
Okay. Are you okay talking about the recipe?
I am. I just don't have it on me, to be honest.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's just a 1050 clone that I pulled off the internet.
Okay.
And let me see. I might have it on my phone. Welcome back, Dave.
Yeah, I got kicked off again. I don't know. My computer's being a little glitchy tonight.
So, Dave, last time I talked to you, we were talking about the Bricktoberfest, and you guys are doing the digital Bricktoberfest this year. You want to elaborate what's going on?
Yeah, sure.
How you guys are doing it?
Our homebrew club does a competition the first weekend in October every year. This will be, I believe, our 9th year doing it. And back in May, our club started talking through, like, what are we going to do given that everything's getting canceled? We sent out a questionnaire to all the clubs in the country having competitions in May, June, July, August, September, and October to see what other people were doing. And we found out there was a handful that had canceled their competition. Some weren't sure yet. And also a handful that indicated they were going to try a virtual competition. One of which, there's a software package out there called Reggie by a guy by the name of Nelson Crowley. And Nelson's been working on trying to make it so you could do a paper-free competition. So we did a pilot with it back in June. We had an in-club competition for cream ales. So it was a flight of 6 beers with 3 judges judging it. And they did it virtually where the judges connected with a Zoom conference and they could fill out the judge sheets electronically using this Reggie software. That worked well enough that we decided to go forward with our own competition and do it virtually, which what we decided to do is make the number of entries smaller. Instead of 220, we went with 84. Why 84? It's divisible by 6. That way, every judge pair gets a flight of just 6 beers, and we don't have to do any mini best of shows. So people can judge in the comfort of their own home. Like if you and I were going to judge, we just coordinate with each other when we want to judge. And let's say it's 6 o'clock on Thursday night. Well, we hook up with our Zoom. We break out the same beer. We pour it, smell it, taste it, all that you usually do, fill out our electronic sheet, talk about it, get a consensus score, and move on. So we're going to do a competition, but it'll just be different in that the judges won't all be in one room. They'll be in their own homes.
Okay.
So our alternative
cool.
was cancel. We didn't want to cancel. We wanted to do something so the homebrewing community still has things that are ongoing when so many things have been canceled.
I really applaud that you guys were able to find a way to make it work. As difficult of a year as this is to make any kind of public event work, and we could name the homebrew competitions that we're familiar with that have all been canceled. And yeah, anybody this year that's just found a way to make things work, I really applaud. And I'll extend that to you guys. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got some changes, like our number of entries we cut back. Mm-hmm. And that was largely that normally a steward would just walk the beers to the judge table. But in this circumstance, the judges are going to come to a pickup point and pick up their flights. And just trying to make it so it's our first and hopefully only rodeo doing it this way. We wanted to try to simplify things as much as possible so we could make it be successful.
Okay. We can throw a promotion out for entries, or have you guys already maxed out your entries?
That I don't know, Jason. That registration and entry drop-off started this past Saturday, August 15th.
Okay.
The last time I checked was this morning, and we had 70 entries out of a limit of 84 already in.
Got it. Okay. All right. And your website, if I remember correctly, is brixiesbeer.com?
Our website, it would be Brixies is the name of the club.
Uh-huh.
And then on that website, there's a link to an informational page and then a link to register for Bricktoberfest.
All right. Nice. Well, you got entries probably still available then, so go ahead and check it out.
Yep.
So where does Brixies meet? Do you guys meet at Brixies?
We're in Flux.
And,
I'm not sure if you're aware that the bar Brixies in Brookfield, which I want to say has been there 80 some years.
Yeah, long time.
They're being converted into Imperial Oak Brookfield. So Imperial Oak that's in Willow Springs is opening up a second location, and it's going to be the same place where Brixies is at. Now, when their date is to open, as with everything right now, things have been very uncertain. I know that they might even be now where they'd be open as a tap room, but getting everything reconfigured to get set up as a brewery is still off in the future. That's all been delayed by what's affecting the whole country. Previously, we met at Brixies, and in the interim, we were going to meet at Imperial Oak Willow Springs, but even that, we've been doing virtual meetings. Possibly in the next month or two, we may go to Imperial Oak and Willow Springs, but our last 3 meetings have all been virtual meetings. Not everyone's that comfortable yet being in groups.
And I get that because like the last 2 of the JBG meetings that Jason and I are a part of, we had them at our respective places that we went to, and according to like our membership, it was still a good crowd, but there was a bunch of people you can see there, and I understand why they weren't comfortable going out and all that, and I get that. So, I mean, we've done some virtual meetings too, But right now you're in Flux, and you're gonna do your next meeting at Imperial Oak. Imperial Oak is what you're saying?
It would be
Hopefully.
our next meeting would be, we meet the second Wednesday of the month. So I think it's Wednesday, September 9th. And at this point, it's unknown if we'll meet at Imperial Oak or do virtual. One reason we've been doing virtual meetings since June is that the first half hour, the half hour prior to the official start of the meeting, we're doing Bricktoberfest planning meeting. And that's, I think, a little easier to do virtually than outdoors in a parking lot around a picnic table. Just trying to get all the items we want to address and attend to.
Mm-hmm.
If it was just doing a normal meeting for Brixies brewers, we'd probably be meeting at Imperial Oak outside. But the added planning of Bricktoberfest, I think that's facilitated better virtually than trying to do it in a crowded parking lot.
No, and that makes a lot more sense.
Has the group remained really engaged, throughout the months where there's been virtual meetings?
Jason, a typical meeting for us in person at Brixies in Brookfield, over the last probably 2 years, a low meeting would be 14, 15 people. A big meeting, we'd be pushing 26 to 30.
Okay.
The virtual meetings have been maybe 10 or 12.
Okay.
And the officers are always there and several other people. And then there's probably a half dozen where there's been a rotation of people through that they've been at one meeting and not at another. But then we pick up a couple other people that haven't been at a previous meeting.
Mm-hmm.
We're running about, I'd say probably averaged about a dozen people or so for our meetings over the last 3 months that we've done virtually.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think you're doing really good. And I can relate to that as well, because JBG, which Paulie was mentioning before, we had a series of virtual meetings as well. And one thing that I thought was really cool is the management team of the JBG went to great lengths to make everything on the virtual meetings as close to an in-person meeting as possible. So we had announcements, we had as event announcements as best we could. We did beer raffles. We even had one meeting where we did a trivia contest.
Nice.
Which was a lot of fun. Which was a lot of fun. So
nice. Very good.
And as a result, I mean, we've kept people have stayed involved. People have stayed excited, and I think it's really been great.
Yeah. I mean, we've maintained, I'd say, Jason, a similar, like the usual. Our meetings start with our agenda, and we go through anything that's coming up and talk through things we might need to attend to. And then usually at a meeting, we would go around the table if we were meeting in person and say, okay, what beer did you bring tonight? Now it's what beer are you drinking, like we started tonight here. And then also we usually do a circuit of what have you brewed or planning to brew. And then that gives each person on the screen a chance to say, oh, I'm planning on brewing, a brown ale this Saturday, and talk about what they're going to do. Or one guy in our club brewed 8 batches of beer in the first 6 weeks of COVID. He was in his home and he was brewing like crazy.
I remember those days. Yeah, I do remember those days.
He was like,
my early days of brewing.
Well, and Paulie working at Brew and Grow there in Bolingbrook, he can speak to that, because there was a run on supplies during the early days of COVID like they've never really seen before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what I've said, and I still say it. People found, they've had an added amount of time, and that's if you're a home brewer, that's a way to spend your time. Let's make some extra batches of beer.
The homebrew shop business is booming right now.
It absolutely is,
unlike it has in probably a decade.
Yeah. So I like that structure you were saying about being able to keep a conversational approach of what have you brewed, and having a forum to talk about that. I've long said that I think that's one of the great benefits of being a part of a homebrew club.
Oh, I would agree, Jason. Forgive me if I get too long-winded, but
sure.
I started brewing in 1994. And there's been 2 things I did in the hobby that made my proficiency in the hobby make a big jump. One was joining the club. Actually, myself and the head brewer at Imperial Oak, Brett Semensky, we started it in 2009. And then you brought people together, and all of a sudden there was all these new things that I wasn't thinking about or doing. And with the way I approached the hobby expanded greatly. And then 2 years in, 1.5, 2 years into the club did a BJCP class with Steve McKenna. And a bunch of us took the test to get certified as judges. And that was a second thing, becoming a beer judge. Also, I made another, forgive the term, a quantum leap in my brewing knowledge and what I was doing. So those two things, becoming a judge and joining a club, had the biggest impact on the quality of beer I make, which then makes the hobby more enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well said. Well said. Well, one of the things that we talked about on I think it was not the last episode, but 2 episodes ago, we had a guest who was the Midwest Homebrewer of the Year back in 2012. And he talked, we had a deep conversation about what were the kind of techniques that once really focused on were really the game changers as far as to making the best homebrewed beer that you can. Do you have any advice for some of the younger homebrewers out there? What are the big things that really can launch your game to the next level?
Well, I'll start with some history on it, Jason. So if we go back to 1994, the previous year, 1993, I took a homebrewing class at College of DuPage. It was called Beer Tasting and Home Brewing. And it was a great class, a Saturday morning thing from like 8 to noon for 8 weeks. And then I thought, I'm going to do this. I was in the process of moving, though, so I didn't buy any equipment. About a year later, my younger brother, who lives in Elmhurst, said, you ever thought about doing that brewing with that class? So we went out together and bought a kit. And I would, for a while, would brew with my younger brother. And the first year or so, everything we made, no matter what we started with, it came out kind of brown and kind of like turpentine. So
I can relate.
No matter what it was a brown ale recipe, anything. So that at that time, though, the quality of stuff you got in shops was a far cry from today. You'd get your can of like liquid malt extract that was already like puffing out, like it had a botulism contaminant. And up on the lid was some taped on dry yeast pouch. And, we'd make it and just dump the dry yeast in and let it go. Well, then we read if you, a couple things, if you make a starter. So we started doing little starters, and that made a big difference. Mm-hmm. And then after the starter became proper oxygenation, and then that made a big difference. And now our beers, instead of all being brown and tasting like turpentine, if you made an Irish red, it actually was kind of like an Irish red. And if you made a pale ale, it came out kind of like a pale ale. So starters and oxygenation were the first big changes that we made, that we had dramatic and very noticeable impacts immediately with those 2 changes. And then as I've gone forward in the hobby, there's been a number of things. More recently, it's been paying a lot of attention to my water chemistry. Mm-hmm. That probably for maybe the last 2 years, I've adopted using reverse osmosis water and then tailoring it with my own salt additions or mineral additions. So then you can make your water be exactly what you want it to be. That's my recent sort of window, if you will, of experimenting and trying new stuff and see what it does.
It's funny you should mention that. That was the first thing that the Homebrewer of the Year had said was the game changer for him, was understanding and modifying the water chemistry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's I did a water chemistry boot camp with Brew Your Own. It was a weekend workshop up in Burlington, Vermont. And that was 4 years ago. And then a year and a half ago, I did an advanced mashing technique session with Gordon Strong in Asheville over a weekend. And Gordon Strong, homebrewers may know, he's a multiple winner of Homebrewer of the Year, the Ninkasi Award, which is the national competition getting the most medals. And he uses all RO water. And the reason he says he does it is, and he mashes with only his base malt. So all the specialty grains, his crystal malts and dark malts, he reserves and puts those in at mash out. Because by mashing with only the base malt and using reverse osmosis water, he knows he can get the exact same pH of his mash every single time. And so he knows he's going to get a really good mash. And then the crystal malts don't need to be mashed. You're just extracting the sugars like you would in a steep. So he puts them in at the end. And the same thing with the dark malts. And he makes amazing beer. And I'm listening to this going, that sounds like a great idea. And then the water chemistry thing I did, the presenter was Ashton Lewis, who's Mr. Wizard for Brew Your Own. And he said at his brewery where he's worked, which is a commercial brewery, they RO all their water. They use all reverse osmosis water on a commercial scale and then do their own salt additions to make it however they want it.
Yeah, I have lots of questions as far as the mash technique that you were just mentioning. So he's using RO water, but he's also adding his own salts to the water, right? Okay.
What Gordon Strong does, he adds 10% phosphoric acid to all of his water
to lower the pH.
Right. He adjusts his entire whatever it is, 10 or 12 gallon volume of water he's going to use for his brew day to a pH of 5.5 using phosphoric acid. Food grade 10% phosphoric acid. And then into the mash, depending on the characteristics that he wants, if it's more malt accentuated, he puts in calcium ions using calcium chloride. If he wants a crisper profile or accentuate some of the hop character, then he's going to use calcium sulfate. If he wants something that does a little bit of both, it's like a 50-50 addition of calcium sulfate and calcium chloride to the mash. And then now one thing I do after the mash at the pre-boil, I put a very small amount of sodium chloride and then magnesium sulfide. The sodium chloride adds a little rounding to the mouthfeel. And then a small amount of magnesium sulfate is the yeast needs magnesium as a nutrient to properly do a better fermentation.
Do you use any of the profiles or calculators to hone in on the chemistry?
Not yet. I haven't done that yet, Jason.
No. Oh, okay.
No, it's kind of interesting. I'm a chemist by trade.
Oh,
but
okay.
I have a pH meter. I measure my pH, but the other additions, it's more of I want it to be malty. I'm going to use calcium chloride.
Okay.
I want it to be a little crisper or drier, a little more calcium sulfate. I've kind of looked at the possibilities of using like brewing water and other stuff, but I haven't made that jump yet. That might be my next step.
Yeah, I am a loyal user of the brew and water calculator. And you being a chemist, I'm about to say something that's probably going to be controversial, and I may get a lot of hate from all the homebrewer listeners out there, but I'm just going to go ahead and put this out there. I have a pH meter here at the house. I have tried to use it in the past unsuccessfully, and I do not use it on a regular basis. I fully rely on the mechanics of the calculator, and I don't feel like it's failed me.
Yeah.
But, I guess it would be fair to say that I've just been kind of cheating the whole time by not, making
Jason,
measurements.
If you're getting good beer, it really doesn't matter.
Thank you. That's how I feel. Okay.
It doesn't matter. I'm doing it because I'm a scientist by trade. I taught chemistry for 30 some years.
Okay.
Just retired a year ago.
Oh.
And then there's also an art side to chemistry or brewing. So it's a blending of like art and science. I don't rely a whole lot on software. I keep a composition notebook that I do everything longhand. I do my hop addition calculations by hand. I do everything just in my head or by hand. I haven't used like a mash calculator, or I have to take that back. I do a calculator to get my strike water temperature properly. That's online.
Okay.
I'm not sure the name of it, but I put in like the temperature of my grain, the gallons of my strike, and what my desired temperature is, and it gives me what my strike temperature should be for the water.
Okay. Okay. And as far as the hop calculations, you're calculating based on the alpha acids and what
Yeah.
the IBUs will be created from it?
Yeah, there's a single page in John Palmer's book, How to Brew, and it has across the top axis of the chart is the gravity of the wort, and the vertical axis is how many minutes the hops will be in the boil.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you a little utilization number, and then there's a formula that you put it in. It's your alpha acid percentage times the ounces of the hops you're using times the utilization times 75 divided by the volume of your beer you're going to end up with. And then that gives you, I'll put in the number of IBUs and I leave the ounces of hops as X, and I solve for how much hop I have to put in.
Right on. Okay.
You
We have a question. We have a question here in the chat. Quick question. I'm trying to figure out water chemistry myself. Is there a good software or cheat sheet I can go by to hone in and make sure I learn about what waters for what beers? Well, I will raise my hand and say the Brew and Water Calculator, which is fairly widely available, is a great way to go. And the way it works is you analyze the profile of your water, or you can start off, with distilled or RO water and start off with 0, and then you can modify everything yourself. And then they have built-in water profiles depending on which beer style or category you're trying to hone in on. It'll give you that profile, and then you can manually add the calculations to see where you land on that. Paulie also has mentioned on previous shows we've talked about in depth that the newest version of Beersmith, the 3.0, has a great water chemistry tool in it as well.
I'll put in a plug on there. I believe Jeff Landers, who's been the Midwest Homebrewer of the Year the last 2 or 3 years running, I'm almost certain he uses Brew and Water.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure he uses the Brew and Water as well, Jason.
Okay. All right. All right. So a couple hands raised for the Brew and Water Calculator. So David, go ahead and check it out. So Dave, what is your favorite beers to make? What's your kind of go-to styles?
That's a great question. It's kind of like, what's your favorite movie? It's sort of like a thing I say, subject to mood and time and place. My current emphasis is lagers. I've gotten into doing decoction mashing and making all kinds of lagers. I would say if I were stranded on a desert island and I only had one beer, it'd be a very, very well-made Martzen would be my favorite beer.
Oh, that's a great choice.
I know.
Other than that, I love. I like all beers. I mean, there's a time and place for an imperial stout. There's a time and place for a barley wine. There's a time and place for, like right now, like a delicious Berliner Weiss, all of which I've made. But I like all the styles. I haven't met a style yet, although I'm not a big fan of some of the trends now of like the pomegranate chicken bacon beer. It's like not my thing. That I don't want, like, I like a stout to be I'm not big on the pastry stouts and some of the things which I understand though. I'm not opposed to them. That's sort of the creative license of the craft industry. I'd just rather have like my go-to would be like an old Rasputin versus like a pastry stout.
Exactly. Perfect. I agree with you. It's kind of funny because right when we first opened up, like when because like milkshakes are the craze right now. We all know where I work at, and I'm at work one day, and they get a bunch of hops. They get some LME, liquid malt extract, and some lactose. I'm like, what are you brewing? I actually knew what they were brewing, and it was just kind of funny. I was like, oh, okay, well, have your fun. Tell me how it tastes. But
it was. Where did I go? It was when I was in Asheville a year and a half ago. I stopped off at Wicked Weed Brewing while I was there.
Okay.
And they had, I think it was maybe a 36 or more tap handle list at the brew pub. And as I went down the list, I was just trying to find a beer, that everything had some adulteration. And I settled on It was a black saison with raspberries aged in a bourbon barrel. That was good, but there was absolutely no identifiable saison character remaining because it was black, it had raspberries in it, and then it was put in a bourbon barrel. And so
all the flavors are taken out of it. Yeah,
it was a fascinating, but that's the big trend. So they're in the business of being a good business. So you got to make stuff that people are interested in buying and tasting. Yeah.
And the creativity is a big part of the appeal, both from the brewing side and from the consumer side. Yeah. It's like, ooh, I never thought of, that type of combination of characters that they would come up with.
Yeah.
But we've talked about on many webcasts, and it's worth repeating, that there's a different kind of go-to style, it seems like, for every new year. And there's a pattern to it. 1 year, something will be hot, and then it'll be gone the next year, and then in with something else. But
may I speak to that, Jason?
Yes, of course.
I mean, one thing that running the Bricktoberfest competition for this, I believe it's our 9th year, is that when we first started, we would have had 12, 14, 16 imperial stouts entered, and maybe 0 pilsners. And then last year, we only had a couple imperial stouts, and we had 14, 16 Martzens. So lagers have become bigger. And then a few years ago, we'd be overwhelmed with black IPAs. Well, now you can't even find a black IPA. They're all New England, and the hazy IPAs are the big specialty ones everyone's doing.
Yeah.
And then in the stouts, if you're going to get a stout, a big thing with the stouts is, I believe the terminology they called that might be like a Mexican style, where it's got like chili and like cinnamon and something like that. It's like a stout style that's got these varied spices and things that are, I believe it's called like a Mexican stout.
I'm not even familiar with this. Paulie, do you know about this?
No, I have not heard about this. It was like a spicy hot sauce, or so what? They're like putting habanero or.
I judged them. The Homebrew Club Chaos did an in-club competition.
Oh,
and this
okay.
This is what everyone was making, and I went to the judging session, and it was all these stouts, and all of them had some type of like a hot pepper in them. And they all had a small addition of cinnamon. And then there may have been some other, maybe a touch of vanilla and other things. And that was the trait and characteristic of all of them. A little bit of heat and a touch of cinnamon, and then maybe some other vanilla or similar kind of additions to them. And if I remember correctly, it was said like this is it, that they were being referred to as Mexican stouts.
Interesting.
I'm intrigued. Yeah,
I am too, actually. I really am intrigued with this. I'm gonna do some research tomorrow.
Yeah. But people are entering these in competitions?
This was a competition for their club.
Okay.
And then since that time, judging at other competitions, I've run across some of these stouts in the specialty category, like spice. What would it be under? If you put in like cinnamon and you put in some pepper, you're going to be in like spice herb vegetable.
That would make sense.
That's the category. Yeah. And since this might have been maybe, I'm going to say January of 2020 that I did this competition for Chaos. And then I judged at Square Kegs in January, and then Drunk Monk was in March. And in some of those, there were these beers were showing up in like specialty or spice. I did spice herb vegetable, I think, at both competitions, and got a couple of these same things: these hot pepper, cinnamon, and another spice or two addition to an imperial stout recipe.
Wow,
that's kind of intriguing.
Yeah,
I mean, I really don't like spicy beers because my stomach can't handle it. I'll have heartburn in the morning, but I at least try one of them. That's actually kind of cool. Because like you always see these IPAs that are spicy, and you got hops and the spice on top of it. It hurts you in the morning. So
I remember last year at Cinco de Mayo. This is the one area that I can relate to. This is The one drink that I saw everybody drinking was what they referred to as a hot beer, which is a Mexican lager with spices and a little dash of Mexican hot sauce. Did that go by? Do I have that name right, Paulie, or did that go by a different name?
Well, I'm sorry. Well, I didn't hear what you said.
Hot beer. Is that the one with the Mexican lager with a shot of spice and a little kick of hot sauce?
Oh yeah, it is hot beer because all these people are doing that. We see all the red spice sitting around the rim of the can and whatnot.
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I mean, I'm not into it because
I'm not either. I feel like that just goes back to what we were saying about the flavors of the year. I feel like that was cool one time, and I think people's taste will kind of evolve from there.
Exactly. I remember the first time.
Go ahead, Jason.
So I do have a point because you mentioned New England's, and New England's are on the top of my mind because I've got a New England that's cold crashing here at the house right now. It was my first time brewing a New England, and Paulie was heavily involved in it because there were so many. Well, actually, before I talk any further, have you made a New England at the house before?
I've never made a New England or a hazy IPA.
Okay, all right. I had not either. This was a first for me, and I was not quite prepared for how much the traditional rules of making homebrewed beer get thrown completely out.
Yeah,
I mean, it was radically different. And Paulie can speak.
I'm guessing, Jason, one of the things you're saying by that is you probably did no bittering addition.
Yes,
you added all your hops in the last 10 minutes of the boil and tossed a whole boatload in just after you turned the heat off.
At the whirlpool, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, and to go further with that, I put a first draft of the recipe together and I sent it to Paulie, and that was the first thing Paulie said was, "Okay, your hop schedule is way off here. Okay, you don't need to be doing a bittering addition. You can throw one in like right at the end of the boil, and then everything else is a whirlpool. And oh, by the way, you don't have a dry hop addition here in the recipe, and you need to have that." So.
Yeah.
Well, you did have a whirlpool for 100 minutes too. That was kind of funny.
Oh yeah, that's right. Which was just a mistype. That's all that was. But anyways, yeah, and I had just modified my brew kettle, so the fact that I've got that I have two different valve inputs now, so I have the ability to do a whirlpool for really the first time. So there was a lot of firsts with this brew day in addition to the style. So. But Paulie was nice enough and coached me through a lot of it, and I did get a first taste of it right before it started cold crashing the other day, and I'm very pleased. So
excellent.
Thank you. I got high hopes, and cheers to Paulie for all the assistance.
Well
done, Paulie.
Yeah.
Not trying to burst my own bubble, but I have won a couple wars with that beer. So the beer that
yes, you have.
So cool. I don't know if you heard, Dave. I got a silver at Charlie Orr last year, the specialty IPA with the haze that I made. What?
Nicely done. That's a very competitive competition. They have 400 to 600 entries most years.
Yeah, but see, it's kind of funny because the whole BJCP thing, like, was it 2 or 3 years ago for Great America Beer Fest? They had like 3 hazy categories. Then here we are at Charlie Orr and Drunk Monk, and they're still following a category from years back. Like my whole hazy, I had to put in a specialty IPA. I'm going up against any other specialty IPAs they have. So I was just so confused there for a minute, and I figured it out, but it was cool.
The last revision of BJCP was effective in 2015. So that was really before all the hazies burst on the scene. So I would imagine there'd be another revision coming up sometime in the not too distant future. And it would probably have New England or hazy IPAs as a separate specialty category.
See, and I started home brewing right in 2015, which correlated obviously with the last BJCP revision. Is that typically the frequency as far as to how they update it? Is it every 5 years?
Jason, all I know with my experience with it is that the previous iteration was 2008.
Oh, wow.
So there was a 2008 version, and then it jumped to 2015. And now with the 2015, though, you can find some styles that are being considered for the next revision, and they're actually designated with like an X versus like a style. It's like there's some of them are New Zealand Pilsner, a Grisette. I think the hazy IPA is in there, or New England style as like an addition to the specialty IPA category.
Yeah.
Trying to think of other ones. There's about 5 or 6 of them that are. They have the whole typical BJCP descriptors of aroma and flavor. It's just not something that's currently in the official guidelines, but they're available for judges. One of them is a Catarina sour. It's a South American style of beer where it's like it's a fruited Berliner, where the emphasis is more on the fruit, and the Berliner is like secondary, and it's a little more alcohol than a typical Berliner. But I was judging at a competition in Milwaukee, and we got a bunch of these Catarina sours, and I was like, what the heck is this? Well, we were able to look up online, and they have the BJCP guidelines for them, so we could use those to help guide us through how we were supposed to judge these beers.
A Catarina sour.
Yes.
Wow. That's another new one.
Yeah, what is a Catarina sour? What's the description on that?
It's, from what I remember, Paulie, it's a fruited. It's similar to a Berliner Weiss, but it's got more alcohol than a Berliner Weiss, and then it's fruit centric. So it's a fruited. It'd be kind of like before they had the Catarina sour category. You may have entered it in fruit beer as a fruited Berliner Weiss, but to be a true Catarina sour, the ABV is more than a Berliner Weiss, and the fruit character is more than would be typical of a fruit beer. Because as a judge, if I'm judging a fruit beer, like someone does a blueberry stout, to properly judge that, the stout character should still be the emphasis, and the blueberry should be like an underlying extra layer of character. Ooh. If the blueberry is the primary flavor and the stout is sort of taking a back seat, as a judge, that would score lesser than the reverse. But the Catarina sour, by the descriptor of the judge guidelines, it's supposed to be fruit forward, like the fruit is supposed to come ahead of the Berliner or the sour character with it.
Okay, so
you could probably look it up online right now and find it, like a Catarina sour.
I'm gonna have to look this up tomorrow because I'm actually intrigued by it. So
yeah.
So it's more of the sour finish. You got the fruit on the front end and the sour on the back end.
Yeah, and it's a lacto type of sour. It's a tart. It's a tart type of sour.
Okay.
It's a heck of a refreshing beer, and it's a South American beer.
Oh, interesting. I'm going to have to look into this and maybe brew it here soon because it's always fun to try new stuff. So,
yeah.
I mean, Dave, like with me and my water pressure in my house, I can't really chill quick. Have you ever have you heard or looked into the whole no chill part of brewing?
I've never looked at I've read about no chill, but I think I've been brewing too long to make that kind of jump. Like Jason was saying before, when he did the New England IPA, he abandoned everything he knew about brewing for this batch. Well, old habits die hard. I've been doing this 26 years. No chill to me seems a little radical and kind of in conflict with what I know about like DMS formation and other stuff if you don't chill the beer rapidly. Now, not no chill, but I've looked at, have you seen these he's a local guy. He makes these Hydra or whatever. It's an immersion chiller where it comes off one hose fitting, but he splits it into 3 copper pipes, and it's 3 a coil of 3 different pipes. So you can chill a 5-gallon batch in pitching temperatures in like 5 to 7 minutes.
Oh yeah, I know.
It's like that. Yeah, I've been looking at maybe getting one of those more than I've looked at no chill.
Well, here's my problem. Is like where I live, I'm on a community well. I have crappy water pressure. Like it takes longer to chill my beer. I would rather put it in my keg, pressurize it, drop it down to temperature, because people in like South Africa and Australia, and that's what they're doing down there. I tried it once. I did an experiment a few months ago, and I ended up coming out with like a 9.7% beer. Jason tried it when he came by one day. So
yeah, it was good. Yeah. I had a go ahead, Paulie.
Paulie, have you ever considered for your chilling just taking a bucket and putting water in and put an immersion sump pump in it, and then ice that, and then you just circulate through the chiller, and then the output goes back into the bucket, and then the pump puts it back through, and you don't have to continually run your water. There was a guy in Brixie's that did that. He'd put a submersible sump pump in like his basement utility sink with a bunch of ice and water, and he would just circulate the water through the chiller and back into that sink.
I did when I first started brewing over 10 years ago. That's what I was doing, because I was still on a well. We can't just run the water all the time, so we just kept bags of ice. And one thing I had a pump and put it through the immersion chiller and came out, but I did add a pre-chiller. I took another immersion chiller and put a bucket of ice and water to get the water coming out kind of as cold as possible. The only problem with that, when you're recirculating, right at first, all that hot water goes right into the very first part, and you have to keep adding ice to it because it's really hot. Yep. If that makes any sense.
Yep.
No, I've done many different ways of chilling. Like right now where I live, like my water pressure, because I'm on a community well, so I got okay pressure. But like say I'm doing my immersion chiller, and then someone goes inside to use the restroom and flushes the toilet, pressure drops. And it's not my fault. It's because of my water supply. So, unless I add a pump to it.
Yeah.
Then I might do that eventually. You never know.
It is quite an interesting idea about the sump pump. You guys mind if I go get a refill? I'll be right back.
Not at all.
Go ahead.
All right.
So, Dave, what have you been brewing lately? You were just up the other day. What did you brew?
My most recent batch, I brewed a grisette.
Okay.
And that's it's a style where it's a low, like a 3.5 to 4% ABV Saison style beer that's got about 25 or 30% wheat, and then it's bittered. It's a heavily bittered. It's supposed to be a bitter, crisp, refreshing style, low ABV Saison family beer. I made one 2 years ago, and my wife loved it. And one of the things I've learned in the hobby is if I want to keep doing the hobby, I have to make beers every now and again that my wife likes to drink. Yeah, so it's a grisette. And then 4 weeks prior to that, I have it sitting at 30 degrees right now. I have a Belgian triple that I did.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Yeah. I bottled a Munich Helles and a Baltic Porter today.
Oh, I love Baltic Porter. That's a good beer. Is that Homer? Is that the Marzen, Jason?
Yes, it is.
I am so jealous.
Is this your Marzen, Jason?
Yes. Well, Paulie was around for it too. So
Jason,
there was some first.
I need to go get a beer, Jason. Tell him the story behind this with the project.
Sure, will do. So on the topic of firsts, there was some firsts around this too. I brew a Marzen once every year. This will be my third year running. I'm a big fan of the style too, and I remember you mentioned the same earlier. This year, I did a couple of firsts, and one was I went with Paulie's no chill method because I've never done it before, and I said, let's give it a shot. I do have a new fermentation chamber that I modified out of an old fridge that a neighbor was getting rid of. So I had to build just get some height to it by putting a couple of 2x8s around it to give it enough height to to fit a fermenter. So got that done. So then the second thing that was new about this was we decided to ferment under pressure, which means you fermented it in a keg, attach a spunding valve, and you'll let the beer naturally carbonate with the pressure from the yeast.
Well, I'd love to hear about that. I've read about that, Jason, but never attempted it.
Yeah, my review on that is I wouldn't say excellent, and I guess a word of advice out there for anybody who's considering trying this is don't go cheap on the spending valve, and that's what I did, and I think I created some problems for myself as a result. So there was no automated kind of spilling out once the pressure got too high. Right. So I ended up going out to the garage every few hours just to relieve the valve. And in the end, I had a beer that I still had to put on CO2 anyways, because it didn't all the way carbonate. So I wouldn't give it a ringing endorsement, but for the two new things, I'm pretty pleased with the end product. It's clear. It's certainly a Marzen by any reasonable measure. So I think throughout the fall season, I think it'll be good.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So I got a quick story on a Marzen, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
Jason.
Of course.
So again, about a year and a half ago, I was in Asheville, North Carolina, what took me there was taking this brew your own boot camp with Gordon Strong on advanced mashing techniques. And it was also the first weekend of both my wife's and my spring break. We were both teachers.
Oh,
and so we made our spring break a week in Asheville. So it started with this class, and then during the week, we would go to 1, 2, maybe 3 breweries in a day, and then do other stuff, arts and crafts things. There's the Vanderbilt, or not the Vanderbilt? No, not Vanderbilt. Maybe it's this huge estate there in Asheville. A great thing to tour. But all the breweries down there, as I was saying before, had what I would call their primary focus was the pomegranate chicken bacon beers, all these exotic things. Like one place we went to, they had a black goze with gooseberries, and all these things. So try to make a long story short, we went to this art district, which was along the train tracks and by the river, and it was an industrial park where the buildings have been converted into pottery studios, photography studios, sculpting studios. And my wife always likes to buy a piece of jewelry whenever we go on a vacation. So we're walking through these different shops. She finds this amazing little pair of earrings that she bought. And as we come out, I noticed there's a brewery across the street. And it wasn't on our list of breweries to go visit or try. It was a place called Wedge. And so we walk over there, and their beer menu was, for me, heaven, because they had just a triple. They had a Munich Dunkel. They had a Marzen, and all these just straightforward classic beer styles.
All right.
And so being a fan of Marzens, my first draft was a Marzen. And I sit down at this picnic table outside and I take a sip. And immediately I turn to my wife and I say, this is the best Marzen I've ever had in my life, which includes going to the Bavarian Lodge and having Eyinger from Germany on draft and other things. I did another thing. I never take pictures of my beers. I took a picture of this and sent it off to a club member, Tony Dayhoff, who just travels the world and knows everything about beer. And I said, Tony, this is the best Marzen I've ever had. And he sent back, he goes, well, coming from you, that's high praise, because it's my favorite style. And it was just such a wonderful little discovery. And one of my favorite memories of the trip was finding this little brewery that wasn't listed in the stuff we were going to go see. And I talked to the guy working behind the bar, and he said, yeah, the brewer he's running the place for 20 years, but that's his philosophy. Everything is going to be just classic, straightforward beers. So I doubt if you were to go there, you would find a pastry stout or a hazy IPA or a lemongrass garlic mushroom pale ale or something there. It's all just, straightforward. And that's why I found this just absolutely scrumptious Marzen.
Oh, what a great discovery. That's a great story.
All right.
Isn't it interesting that those clean styles, the Dunkels, the Marzens, the Pilsners, are some of the more difficult beers to make? Like the beer, the brewing process is more involved. Like I heard you mention earlier about decoction mashing. I have one brew day story with decoction mashing. Lagering has its own areas of complexity. I always found that interesting that you have to, that it really does take that added effort and attention to detail to get a clean, crisp beer like those.
Oh yeah. I mean, the decoction thing, Jason, has been a within, I'm going to say maybe the last 2 years, I've dabbled with it, and maybe 3. But the kind of proof in the pudding was the workshop I went to with Gordon Strong, because he set up a boiling grain on a what's the stuff that heats with like magnetic fields? Induction.
Yeah.
Is that
Okay.
the plate? Like the room we were in at the convention center, we couldn't set up like a propane burner. So he had an induction plate that he got the grain boiling on. And then he talked through stuff. So it boiled for maybe a half hour or 40 minutes. And before it boiled, we did a little clump of it around the people in the room. And it's like you're tasting a little tablespoon or teaspoon of oatmeal. And then after it boiled, we did the same thing. And there was a noticeable and a very positive direction change in the flavor of that. And Gordon stood there. He goes, "Do you taste that?" We're all nodding our heads. He goes, "You can't get that with specialty grain. That only comes from the boiling, that you're boiling the grain and you're forming these melanoidins and these other reactions occurring. And that's how you get that." So he's a big fan and advocate of decoction. There's other people that'll say, "That doesn't make that big a difference. It's not worth the effort." I was willing to give it a try. It's a lot longer brew day. Now, another thing it does, though, is when you're doing it, your house just smells amazing. Because like those, like melanoidin reactions, it's like when you make the crust of bread. It's that chemical reaction occurring with the boiling grain. To me, it's just another experience of like heaven on earth, where you're getting all these aromas on a brew day. Yeah.
When you did the decoction, was it a single, double, or triple?
I've done all 3.
You've done all 3? Okay, all right.
Different brews and different, depending on what I'm trying to do. I was telling Paulie that a couple of weeks ago I brewed a grisette, and prior to that, maybe 7 weeks ago, or 6 or 7, I brewed a Belgian triple. And I tried a decoction technique with the triple that I read about in Brew Your Own magazine, and that's where you strike and do a protein rest at like 129, 131.
Yeah.
Only a short one, like 10 minutes. And you pull your grain out, put it in a pot, and you heat it up to 158, which is the alpha amylase range. And what that does, it snips your starches into bigger dextrins. And you hold it there for 20 minutes or so, and then you bring the grain to a boil. You then mix the grain back in with the liquid, which you've left behind, and that's where the enzymes remain. And you now, by mixing the boiling grain back into the liquid, it raises it to like 146 or 45, which is where your beta amylase is active. Well, you've already done the rest with the alpha amylase to make dextrins that the beta amylase can now chew on and make all these fermentable sugars. So it's a strategy that allows you to make a very fermentable wort to get the dryness that's desired in a triple, because you're doing the alpha amylase at 158 without denaturing the beta amylase that you need to be working at 145. And when you remix the liquid in the boiling grain, you hit 145. The boiling action is burst all your starch granules. The alpha amylase has made the starch into a more fermentable or a more accessible type of sugar for the beta amylase, and you get this I don't know how it worked out. It's my first go around with this, but I gave it a try. That's something I would not be able to do without decoction. To go 131, do a rest at 158, but then do a rest at 145. Because if you go in order like that, when you get to 145 to 158, you haven't created those accessible dextrins for the beta amylase to make it more fermentable.
Is this beer still fermenting right now?
I've fermented it, and it's now in a period of about 3 to 4 weeks of 30-degree storage.
Got it. So it's lagering right now.
Yeah,
All right.
I'd probably bottle it within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay. Did you take a final gravity rating already?
That got down to 1.008.
008. Oh, that's going to have a nice dry character. Well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
So, I got a question.
Yeah.
Dave, explain your homebrew setup. How's your setup at your place? That's a big question to talk about.
Okay, my wife and I moved into the townhouse that we're in 2006. And one of the draws of moving here was we had a 2-car garage and it has an unfinished basement. In the unfinished basement, we put in a kitchenette. That's my brewing area. Now, why did we do a kitchenette? Well, it has other functions then. If we entertain, we can use the oven and stove down there for hosting Thanksgiving dinner for the family. It's an extra oven and stove. But it's also an area where I can do, I do stovetop. I do full wort boils, about 8-gallon boils. But a guy in my homebrew club made a bunch of heat sticks for people. So it's stovetop supplemented with electric. So I can get a good rolling boil with 8 gallons on top of the stove. Okay. My mash tun is the 10-gallon Gatorade jug with a false bottom. And then when we did the kitchenette, I actually put like an outdoor garden spigot on the wall so I can hook to that and run water right through the immersion chiller, which I pre-chill. I have a 20-quart pot that I fill with ice and water and have an immersion chiller, and that goes into the pot, and then the effluent goes into the kitchen sink that I have there in the kitchenette. And then I usually draw off the whole pot into a carboy. I call it carboy number 1. I let it sit for 2-3 hours and all the trub settles to the bottom, and then I transfer the top layer into another carboy pitch, and then I've got 2 regular refrigerators and 2 chest freezers in the basement dedicated to the hobby to do temperature control or lagering, or if I have to keep something like the triple is in one of my chest freezers, just sitting there at 30 degrees for 4 to 6 weeks. Now, due to COVID, 2 of those refrigeration units have been changed over and are now devoted to long-term food storage, where in March we went out and bought a whole boatload of food that we could freeze. And so right now I have 2, 1 upright refrigerator and 1 chest freezer devoted to the hobby in the basement. That's my setup.
All right. Like, that's one thing we always ask home brewers, like, what do you brew on? So, like, I brew today. I did a smash. So, Mosaic Promise. We were out Golden Promise. We only had 6 pounds of Golden Promise, and I used Marisada for a substitute, and I did Mosaic for the hop. Been doing this like little smash for a while.
Nice.
It's fun to do.
Nice. So your setup, Dave, is all indoors, huh?
Yes.
Wow.
All indoors.
Oh, that's awesome.
All indoors.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Coming from a garage setup, which I have, I'm very envious, because brewing in a garage in January is not a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. I mean, it's one reason we set it up. It's very convenient, and with the electric, it makes it so I can do the larger scale boils. Now that's again, Jason, back to how we opened tonight. That's from my homebrew club. There's a guy in the club. He made several versions of these heat sticks, and then he finally came up with one that he was really happy with. And he brought it to a meeting, talked about it. A couple of us said, "Yeah, make me one." And then he made us one, and I just, paid him whatever it was, $40. And I got this great heat stick that it goes into the pot, and then I think it's a element from a water heater goes along the bottom, and I can plug it into my wall. I've got a GFI outlet right there next to the stove, and that I can only have on or off. And then I can control the size of the flame from the stove under the pot if I want a simmer or a medium boil or really a big rolling boil. I
Okay.
can then adjust that with the heat underneath it.
You get enough heat from that heat stick, you can boil up to 8 gallons of liquid.
That's the most I've tried. It can bring
Yeah.
8 gallons to a boil.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the homebrew club members made this.
Yeah.
Man, that is awesome.
Yeah, a guy by the name of Frank Sheridan. Yeah.
I'm always intrigued. I mean, because all the homebrewers I know just have their own version of just an inventiveness of just having to on the fly just they found a problem and they had to makeshift something to kind of get them past that. Our other co-host here on A Nice Place to Brew, George, who lives down in Virginia, he's got countless stories of that on his own too. So to steal one of his stories, he's got a heating system that involves a sous vide, and he's developed a recirculation system between his mash and his lauter, where it'll result in it, and he's able to create recirculation through a pump, and he's got and he uses the sous vide to maintain the temperature throughout.
Yeah, that's if I were to make another adjustment in my brewing setup, I'd love to set up a recirculation mash where I could program or control the mash temperature very precisely and specifically.
Yeah.
I don't think that right now. I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm doing all right with what I got. And if I start accumulating even more brew stuff in the basement,
I can relate to that.
The basement has kind of just evolved into sort of it's the brewery and workout place.
Yep. Yep. My garage is separated in two areas. There's the hardware side and then the homebrew side. That's it's got its own whole side. So it's interesting how that builds up over time.
Yeah.
So what's next as far as the next brew day? Do you have one set yet?
Yes. My next beer I'm going to make is an oatmeal stout.
Oh.
And that's the club that I'm in. We do 2 in-house competitions a year in June and in December. And we do a little vote with the club. And we picked June was, we did a cream ale competition. And the December beer is an oatmeal stout. And so I'm going to brew an oatmeal stout to put it into the club competition.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good deal. What about you, Paulie? Besides what you did today.
Actually, I might brew tomorrow. I might do that 2 hard clone that I've been telling you about for a while.
Nice.
Got the grain. I'll go get the hops and the yeast from Brew and Grow. Tomorrow around 11 o'clock, I'll be brewing in the afternoon. So, about what I have going.
Nice.
Although, no, it's getting fall. I'm thinking about I got to try the Marzen that we did.
Yeah.
So, I do got to try that. But then I'm going to probably going more brown ales and stouts and whatnot. It's that time of year.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
May Jason and Paulie, would you guys mind if I get a refill for my beer?
Of course.
right
Go
back.
for it. Yeah.
You did. That's what we do
Pardon me,
here.
Paul?
Yes.
We'll be right back.
I want to use up this honey at the house, Paulie.
I got it. I can get a hold of that guy. Should we make another?
No. I honestly, I don't want to buy more. I just want to use what I've got.
You want to make a baguette?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we could do that if that makes sense. I mean, how much do you have?
I think I've got probably 4 pounds.
All right. You know
maybe
what?
5.
I'll look into baguette tomorrow or Saturday, and we'll talk about it.
All right.
We should know that because I actually when we bottled those beers, I had that baguette from Manhattan that they did with Brian from Impossible. So we can taste it. We can figure it out for ourselves.
Sure.
Should we do one of these things where like we try it one night and the next thing you know we're on the internet geeking out? I'm okay with it. I do that myself, but it's fun to do with somebody. Like today, on my brew day, I put it in like 60 or 70% efficiency.
Yeah.
Supposed to be 50, ended up being 1060. I'm like, yeah, my efficiency was 81.1.
Nice.
I'm like, oh fuck,
dude, that's awesome.
Well, you saw the picture of how clear that. I sent you the picture of how clear that beer was.
Yeah. No, it looked great. Yeah. Well, you worked on that rolling system that you built for Uncle Rick, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Although
and that's kind of
our volume thing was off, and we only got probably like 3.5 gallons. Whatever, it is what it is.
Oh wow. Okay. All right.
Because I didn't collect enough. Sorry, it happens.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah, our estimated OG was supposed to be 1050. It ended up being 1060. I'm like, yeah.
Oh man, what are you gonna do?
Oh, sorry, my beer is gonna be a little bit higher ABV. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Trying to think what else we got. Get the cover here.
So what is that beer ready, or is it still like settling?
What, the New England?
No, the Marzen. Is it
Marzen's? No, it's on tap. It's ready to go.
Oh shit! All right, I'll be there Saturday.
Come on over. I'll be here. Yeah.
Come by. We gotta try this.
Yeah.
And we can figure out how to fix that goddamn spunding valve that we were talking about.
Yeah, it's, you know what? I'm not even worried about it. And honestly, while you're here, we can probably bottle up your half too.
All right.
Yeah, we'll get that done.
I just gotta make sure I bring my beer gun with me to work on Saturday.
I mean, I have one here. We don't even need yours.
You're right.
Yeah.
All right. Although maybe I should bring some longer airlines so you don't have the short roll.
Actually, that's a good idea. That's one thing that we could use. I've just got that short one.
All right. So how long? Like 2 or 3 feet?
3. Yeah, probably on the higher end of that. 3 feet if you can.
All right. I can do whatever.
Dave, do you push all the beers you make into kegs?
I've never done the pushing. I just siphon.
Siphon. Okay. Yeah.
I mean,
bad choice of words.
I've never done the CO2 purge where I push like Star Sand out of the keg with CO2 and then push the beer into the keg with CO2 pressure. Mm-hmm. I usually just put the keg there, sanitize and open, and I use the auto siphon and siphon from my carboy right into the keg.
Okay.
And then get it up to near the top, and then I do a couple quick shots of CO2 to try to bleed a little bit out of the oxygen.
Mm-hmm. Right. So for competitions, do you attach a beer gun and go to bottles from there?
Yes. I've started doing that about 5 years ago now. Okay. I make a barley wine every year that I taught high school, and my birthday is in December. So I always had my birthday during winter break. And starting about a decade ago, I make a barley wine every year. One year it's English. I love barley wines.
Okay.
And the trouble I was having with the barley wines the first few years was they'd always would be insufficiently carbonated because it says too much alcohol. So then I got a beer gun and started kegging my barley wines and bottling them out of the keg so I could get a proper level of carbonation with them. Yeah. And then they started doing much better in competitions.
Yeah.
One guy's telling me, a guy by the name of Jay Bacala that's in Urban Knaves of Grain, saying, the flavor on this beer was great, but because it was flat, I couldn't score it very well because the carbonation affects so many parameters of the flavor, the mouthfeel, all is affected by the level of carbonation.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen some other members I mean, because I've had a beer gun ever since I started kegging. I recommend that to everybody out there who's kegging. I think there's too many times that you'll find that you need to move to bottles, and that is the ideal way to do it. But I've seen homebrewers come up with some pretty interesting inventions as to things to move to bottles in other ways, like modified racking canes that still can maintain a CO2 flow. But Paulie, I can see, is laughing because he knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I've never, other than beer that I've brought to, like Paulie has seen me at the Chaos Brewbecue and other events,
Yeah,
or things that I have for our club picnic in the summer. I've never done any kegging. I've, for 26 years, bottled everything.
Oh wow!
I don't
really?
have a keg. I don't have a kegerator at home. The only time I've kept something in a keg is if I was going to serve it on draft at a festival or at our club picnic. Otherwise, everything I've put in a keg. Like today, I bottled 2 cases of Munich Helles and 2 cases of this Baltic Porter. And I don't serve anything off the keg in my home.
really, not
Yeah.
even a picnic tap.
Nope.
Wow. Okay.
I think I drink too much then.
Oh.
Oh yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
I don't know about that, but I'm just the
I
thing.
get that.
I brew about 20 batches of beer a year, and I might drink 3 to 5 bottles of beer a week.
Okay.
So most of the beer I give away to friends. It's just, I say I'm like the Oberweis dairy guy. Just get my bottles back to me, and I'll send you off with another case of full bottles.
Right?
And so the bulk of what I brew, I give away, and it's easier to give away if it's in bottles than in kegs.
That is a very good point. And I will echo that as well. That is one of my favorite things about being a home brewer is being able to give away beer and things to people I know, because it always makes for a great story. It's always enjoyed. It's great.
Yeah, just today, my wife was leaving. She's getting ready for her school is going to be in person, and they're trying to figure out how to do it with everything. And so one of her assistant principals, like over the last month, like every day, what he's supposed to do has changed. So he's just been busting his tail, and he likes beer. So before she left today, she goes, "Can I put a 12-pack together for Rocky, and take it to work or whatever, or 6-pack?" And so we put together a little sampler of homebrew for her to bring in as like a thank you. And we realize you're working so hard trying to figure all this out. Here's some homebrew. And so
That's
it looks
awesome.
like he'll be getting one like every week, because 6 bottles will go about a week, and then another 6-pack will come.
I love that. That's awesome.
Well, Jason and Paulie, if you looked in our basement, I think I have about 48 cases of homebrew right now. So it's got to go somewhere.
Hey, you know where I'm at. You can always drop bottles off.
I know.
There you
Paulie.
go.
Now, I have to admit, some of it, I've got barley wines as old as 10 years old now. Like I've got these shelves, and the high ones have all the stuff that just ages. Barrel-aged imperial stout, barley wines, Belgian quadruples, icebox, stuff like that that'll keep for 4, 5, 6, 8 years. And then the lower shelves are all the stuff like the cream ales and Munich Helles and stuff. That's the volume drinking stuff. Yeah.
Got to quickly. Actually, I remember you telling me about how like you make that barley wine every year. You want to elaborate kind of how you make it? Because I know you do you use a lot of DME, right? They were talking to you like coming to buy.
I have, well, first I alternate. I do American one year, then English, American, then English on alternating years.
Okay.
And some of the things that I've learned from doing them is last year I did a no sparge. So this is going to sound insane, but it was a 5-gallon batch and it had 42 pounds of grain. But I did a no sparge because I found with the barley wines, if I do a sparge, I end up with 10, 12, 14 gallons of liquid. And I don't want to do a 4, 5, 6 hour boil. So I did a no sparge, to get all the just like it's literally taking all the first runnings and making that into a brew pot. And I borrowed a mash tun from a club member, so I had 2 Gatorade mash tuns going, each one with 21 pounds of grain in it. And then what I did is the second runnings, I sparged it, and someone from the homebrew club came over with 2 5-gallon food grade buckets, and they took the sparge and made another beer with that, like an 050 beer with the second runnings.
Wow.
But then what I do is this is now going to be crazy, but I do 2 4-gallon starters. And I do the starters in a 6.5-gallon carboy, 2 of them. So I get this giant layer of yeast in 2 6.5-gallon carboys, and then I split the chilled wort into those 2 carboys. Because the thing I found, if you have like a 1.126 original gravity, the fermentation gets so violent that I would burp off like a gallon or gallon and a half of my precious wort. Well, a barley wine brew day could be 12, 14 hours long. I didn't want to lose that. So I put this massive amount of yeast in 2 separate carboys with 3 gallons of wort in each one. And even with that, I still need a blow-off tube. The fermentation gets so violent. And then I temperature control it like at about 64 degrees to keep it on the cool end so it just doesn't get so violent. And then as it starts to slow down, I'll switch to warming it. That, for example, I'll put a lamp with an incandescent bulb in the fridge and have the lamp plugged into my thermostat. And then I can get it up to 68 or 70 or 72 to make it finish all the way out so it's not poorly attenuated.
1.126 original gravity. Jeez.
I had a 1.126 that went all the way down to 0.20. That's like a 15.6% alcohol beer.
How much yeast did you need for that?
Well, I did 2 4-gallon starters.
4-gallon starters?
Yes, 2 4-gallon starters.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I do the starter in a 6.5-gallon carboy. And then I just drain the liquid off and I have the yeast cake on the bottom. And all that yeast was only for 3 gallons of chilled wort. Yeah. Because otherwise you end up with it's too risky. You'll get like unattenuated syrupy beer, and that's just not good barley wine.
Right. And stress out the yeast and create some off flavors with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But those are some things I've done to make sure the barley wines come out well. I use a massive amount of yeast. I oxygenate. I might do 3, 4, or 5 minutes of pure oxygen into the wort to get make sure it's well oxygenated. And they've turned out well. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I remember you talking about it all the time. Like we like coming to the store and talking about it, and like I just wanted to say what you did here. It was kind of cool. Oh, where'd Dave go? Bye, Dave.
Hey, we're back. Sorry, browser issue.
I mean, and then I name them just a reference. Now I just turned 60 in December, so each barley wine was like Old 51, Old 52, Old 53. Old 55 took gold at Boss when it was like 2 years old. Old 56 took gold at Drunk Monk. Old 58 took a gold at Drunk Monk. I had the newer ones. I haven't gotten any competition, but they've fared pretty well. They've done all right. I like doing the barley wines. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one thing I've yet to do. That's like a style I really want to do, but I don't know. Okay. Maybe I'm a little scared, but whatever. I don't have a fermenter that I can let sit for a while. You know, like that one needs to get turned over and make other beer. Yeah. That makes sense.
That Baltic Porter looks delicious.
This one?
Yeah.
I got to tell you, Jason, it came out really well.
Nice. Nice.
That is I don't know if my regulator's off or whatever, but the PSI, I had it 15 pounds of a PSI at 30 degrees for 4 weeks. And it's not quite as carbonated as I would have thought.
30 degrees.
It's carbonated, but it's just low.
15. Yeah, that should get it done. Yeah.
Yeah.
That Baltic Porter is a style that's been calling. It's been calling out to me for a long time. It's like that should be a style. I've never brewed it. I've certainly enjoyed plenty of glasses of it, but I've never brewed it. This may be the year.
I would highly recommend it, Jason.
Yeah. Okay.
Here's. I mean, a Baltic Porter is like similar to an Imperial Stout. It's going to be like a 8 or 9% alcohol beer. It doesn't have the roast that you have in Imperial Stout. It's got more of a dark chocolate accentuated flavor profile. And then because this one's been lagered for 6 months, it's just smooth as liquid velvet. I mean, it is. Wow. Yeah, it's good. Wow. Sorry, I shouldn't say that about my own beer, but I just bottled it today. But I'm pleased and thrilled with how it came out.
Well, I'm now thinking to myself, maybe a late September brew day. After lagering, probably start to be ready for tasting in early November. That sounds very fitting. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's going to be a project this year. We got added comments in the chat. Somebody named Bob Ward is saying hi.
Hey Bob, how you doing?
Bob.
Oh,
Bob Ward.
Bob Ward. He's a friend of yours, Paulie?
I know who he is. He is a friend of mine. Yeah.
All right. He says, "Hello, amigos. Best wishes."
Yeah.
Cool.
That's cool. He chimed in. I haven't seen Bob in a while.
Yeah.
But
we had a good active chat tonight. This is great.
If I may, Jason, when I went and got my beer, we were talking about gadgets for a while there.
Yeah.
And I want to show this gadget that my neighbor made.
Please.
If I can get this lined up right now. My neighbor right across the drive from me was also a home brewer. Unfortunately, about a year ago, he moved to Florida. But good for him. Not good for me. But he was also a gadget guy, and he's also a biker. He rode bikes a lot. This device is like a cool thing. What it has here is this is like a gray gas input for a ball valve on a corny keg. And then you've got your sleeve, or I'm not sure what the proper names are for all these things, your little threaded fitting to screw the gray piece in, a clamp on, and this is gas pressure tubing. And then on this end, what he put on here, let me get my picture. There we go. It's the piece that would be like your valve on a car or bicycle tire.
Can you bring it a little closer to the camera? Yeah, there you go.
And what this does is if I'm checking, like when I sanitize my kegs, before I fill them, I check them to make sure they're holding pressure, that I don't have a leak. I might have a poppet valve that's not sitting properly or something. And this, I can put my like 8 PSI into the keg, put this on the gas fitting, and then on this piece again here, you can put on a tire pressure gauge.
Huh.
Because it's just like checking your pressure on your car tire. And I have a little digital one, and I put it on here, and boom, it'll tell me, I'm at 16 point, whatever it is, 8.9 PSI. Well, then I let it sit for a day. I come back the next day, and I check it. And if it's at like 8.9 PSA, I'm like, okay, that keg's good. If it's dropped to like 1.8 PSI overnight, I know something's not seated properly. I'm not going to fill that keg.
Right.
But it's kind of a nifty, simple little, and it's also, Paulie, we had a jockey box with our club. To purge the lines, what we do is we put, how do I put this? Oh, we hook this end up to a bicycle pump.
Yeah.
Put this end on a corny keg, and then we pump like the PBW or whatever through the chilling coils in the jockey box to help clean it. So it's a really nifty little device.
That is kind of cool. Now that I think about it, Dave, you met Jason before, because that chaos party that I met you at like 2 years ago, Jason was there too. He was part of our
2018. You guys were right next to us.
Yes, we were. That's right.
With the garbage can jockey box thing.
Exactly.
We're known by that, the garbage can jockey box. I like it.
And it works. It's been working for a long time. So
it has. It has. All right. coming up on the 7:30 time spot, so I think it's time to wrap it up. Dave from Brixie's Brewers, thank you so much for joining us. This was a great discussion.
Oh, you're most welcome. I was glad and thrilled that Paul invited me to come join you. And an hour and a half isn't near sufficient time. You could talk homebrew all night.
I hear you. I hear you. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I'll give you, if we could throw out one last plug, the Brixie's Brewers Brixtoberfest competition is open. BrixiesBeer.com is the club's website, I believe, and that will take you to the Reggie's page for registration.
Yes. If you go to the Brixies, Jason, there's a link on Brixies that says Brixtoberfest. That link takes you to an informational page about the competition that tells you what the entry limit is, how many bottles you have to enter, and so forth. And then on that page, there's a link to Reggie, which allows you to register.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, you heard it here, everybody. Registration's open, so check it out. All right. We do the webcast every Thursday at 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Check us out on Facebook and YouTube at those time spots. And for all of our past shows are available on our YouTube channel. We've been doing this show every week since the beginning of the quarantine. So we got plenty of shows out there. And if that's not enough for you, by next Thursday, we have a podcast under the same name, A Nice Place to Brew. It's available on Stitcher, Spotify, and iTunes, and all those places you get your podcast from. Our website is www.aniceplacetobrew.com, and our social media links are A Nice Place to Brew and Nice Place to Brew. All right. Until next time, we raise a glass one last time. And as we say, it takes a lot of good beer to make great beer. Cheers.
Cheers.